Well, if you continue reading in verse 24 of Genesis, another great dinosaur verse, there were dinosaur plants, which, by the way, are the same plants that are around today, except for some that have gone extinct because of the tropical needs they had. There were dinosaur fish, which by the billions filled this planet. But let's look at the dinosaur animals. It says in verse 24 that God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth after their kind." And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after their kind. Notice how many times He says that. And the cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps on the ground after its kind. And God saw it was good. Remember, God said to them, when He saw it was good, He says, "Fill the earth." And He says in verse 30, "Every beast of the earth and every bird of the sky and everything that moves, I have given plants for food which has life." Did you know that the animals filled the earth as well as the plants and the fish? And if you study very much, you'll find out that in the pre-flood, high-efficiency atmosphere, reptiles could have grown to immense sizes. There would have been giant flying creatures that could have flown more easily. And gigantism, that means big things, would have been very prevalent. In fact, right here in Glen Rose, Texas, even though the evolutionists are screaming and crying that it's false, there have been irrefutable verification of human footprints inside and beside dinosaur tracks. The only problem is the human footprints are 12 inches long. Big people lived back then that lived a long time because of this vapor canopy. I was telling Bonnie last night that some of the most beautiful dragonflies found are 380 million years old. They look exactly like the dragonflies today, except they had a wingspan of 3 feet. Can you imagine one of those running into your windshield? And cockroaches, 380 million-year-old cockroaches. Do you know what the director of the American Museum of Science had to say about the cockroaches? She said they look disgustingly the same. Do you know why? They are the same. The only thing that's happened since creation is extinction of probably one half all the animals. You say, well, wait a minute. If there were that many animals around, how did they all fit on the flood? Well, let me give you a quick calculation. If all the animals in the world numbered 100, 60 of them would be aquatic. 60% of all known species are aquatic. So of the 40% that would have to get into the ark, 70% of all land animals are insects. So you knock off another 28, there'd only be 12 out of every 100 animals that would have to get on the ark that would need to be on it. And if you take all the animals in the world, the average size is the size of a sheepdog. Did you know there's room for every animal known on this planet doubled because of extinction? 20,000 species known that would fit in the ark. A pair of them, 40,000. Let's say that half of them are extinct. Put 80,000 animals on. You can fit on the ark 80,000 animals and still only use half of Noah's ark because it had enough floor space to put on twice as many animals. God knew what He was doing. God said, "I'm going to fill the earth." The giant flying reptiles, the pterosaurs, the pterodactyls, the pterodons, would have been unable to fly in our present atmosphere. They need heavier atmosphere to get enough airlift with their 40 to 50-foot wingspans. Heaven and earth, in the systems God describes in Genesis chapter 1, would have been very adequate to have provided the type of atmosphere that these creatures could have flown in. In order to protect their jobs, though, evolutionists dare not even suggest a global flood of Noah's day as part of their solution to the problem. So what they say is these creatures couldn't have flown, or they just dove off of cliffs. But God created a world where immense creatures could live and grow and could show His eternal power. I told Bonnie, I said, this is too big a topic to talk about this morning, and I could talk about dinosaurs all day. I mean, I have so many notes. But let me just share this with you before we go, and that is this. It doesn't matter where you look. You can see God. If you look back at these immense creatures, you see a God of symmetry and order, a God that created a world that these kind of creatures could live in, but He created man that could live in that world as well as the present world, but these animals couldn't make it. Although a few of them remain that show us some of God's splendor. If you look into the present, and I told the Discovery class about the ouzel bird. I mean, the ouzel bird. You ever met an ouzel? An ouzel is a little tiny bird that lives in the Pacific Northwest. It was alive when Adam and Eve were here. It went through the flood, and it lives in the Rocky Mountain streams of the Pacific Northwest. It only lives where water is foaming and white. And it builds its nest underneath waterfalls. And the ouzel bird spends its day floating like smoke atop the white water. And the ornithological studies have told us that those birds are the most buoyant birds in the world. They're more air than they are anything else. They don't even sit in the water like a duck does. They sit on top of it, just like smoke. But as the bird watchers watch it, it will instantly disappear and go beneath the water. Scientists used to wonder, where'd it go? What's it doing? So they set up all these elaborate cameras, and they found out that bird instantly drops like lead to the bottom, and it walks on the stream bottom. And it fills its little beak with all the little creatures it eats, and when it gets done, it walks out of the stream, swallows, goes right back floating like smoke on top of the water. They say, how does it do that? It has a muscular system that can instantly exhaust all the air in its body. And so it becomes dense, and it sinks. And as soon as that's why it can't swim out, it has to walk out of the stream because it's so dense. But when it gets up on the shore and swallows, it can immediately inflate its body again. That's one creature. That's one nearly extinct little bird on the Pacific Northwest. When you think of creation and when you think of this world, rejoice in our Creator God. Well, I want to conclude with this. You're in Genesis. Look at chapter 4. Because how did we get dinosaurs and cavemen and all that kind of stuff? And I don't even have time to tell you about protozoa. Remember God said multiply? I'll tell you about one protozoa. A protozoa, normally, protozoan creature, lives 60 hours. A protozoan comes to maturity at 12 hours. That means it can reproduce. One of these little organisms can reproduce at 12 hours old. When it reproduces 60 exact copies of itself every 12 hours. They only live 60 hours. If a protozoan lived longer than 60 hours, and if it reproduced at that rate, which God built into it the ability to do, there would be, in 1 year, more protozoans than there are electrons in the entire universe. That's 10 to the 130th power. That's how fast animals reproduce.